What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolve video. Alright soldiers, and in this video we're going to be doing this set 14 and 15 Havencaft reveals, and I don't know what any of these cards do, if I'll be honest with you. So as a control player, I do know Havencaft is just very good at removing, very good at like prolonging the game, and then of course with the older Havencaft stuff that we had, there was just good burn damage. So there's that option that Havencaft has as well. And of course, I don't want to run this intro too long. Let's go ahead and get into the set because I know you people have somewhere to be. So let's go ahead and start off with BP14 Banquet of Dreams. Alright, so without further ado, let's start out with our first card. So we have All Feeling Divine, which is a 4-cost 3/3. You can evolve from one when it comes into play Fanfare. You summon a Fox of Invitation token. You can also activate for 2 play points that banish this card from your cemetery, and then you can summon a Fox of Invitation token, give it +2/+1 to each Fox Invitation token on your field. Alright, so before we talk into All Feeling Divine, let's figure out what the Fox of Invitation token does. So it's a 1-cost follower token, which is 0/1, and it also has ward when it comes into play, give your leader +1 defense. Alright, so it looks like we are playing defensively, something that Havencaft wants to do. So with the All Feeling Divine legendary, as long as it's in the cemetery, looks like the deck's going to be looking like you're going to be putting a whole bunch of Fox of Invitation tokens into the field, just because of that activated ability of spending 2 and then turning them into 2/3s, and then they have ward, and of course you're just going to be healing 1 for each one that you play on the Fanfare. So I think you're definitely going to be generating a whole bunch of these Fox of Invitation tokens on your field. Alright, but next let's look at the All Feeling Divine Evolve. So it turns into a 4/4, but on Evolve you select any follower on the field and deal it damage equal to 2 times the number of Zealot followers on your field. Alright, so I will say it's pretty interesting. Usually most of the cards we have seen so far has checked for festive cards, and I wasn't really paying attention to the side archetypes here. I was just thinking, oh yeah, this is all for festive, because that's usually how set 14 is working here. But it seems for set 14 for Havencaft, we're going to be checking for Zealot followers. So if there are any Zealot followers that are outside of set 14/15 that are going to be non-festive, you can include them in this deck, it seems. Alright, but next up we have Shion Immortal Aegis. So she's a 6-cost 3/7 and she has ward, but this card can't be destroyed by abilities, and while this card is on your field, reduce the damage dealt to this follower and your leader by 1. When she comes into play Fanfare, you put a Mercurial Might token into your EX area. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie, out of set 14, I really do like this legendary. I think this is going to be a very good card for the ward deck. So not only can this card just not be removed by abilities, it can be pinged down though. I believe this card can be pinged down from spells, but of course on its other static ability, it's going to take -1 damage whatever you do. So if you're doing 3, you're doing 2. And then that's not only just for this card, that's for your leader as well. So being able to reduce damage and, you know, prolong the game as much as you can is pretty good. And of course, we're going to be figuring out what this token does too. Alright, so looking at Mercurial Might, so it's a 1-cost spell token and it's a quick, so for the rest of this turn, reduce damage dealt to your leader by 1 and then you draw a card. Alright, so not only is the big ward follower going to stop us from taking damage by 1 and herself, we do have a nice spell card that can just be activated our opponent's turn, and of course if we have that extra 1 play point, we can draw on our opponent's turn, which is just very good for any control deck in any scenario. And then being able to reduce any damage, which could be potentially lethal, by 1. Alright, but moving on, let's talk about Neckbet. So she's a 3-cost 2/2, and this card can't be played from your EX area, but you can evolve her for 1. And at the start of your opponent's end phase, if this card is in your EX area, you can spend 2 play points to deal 2 damage each enemy leader, and then give your leader +2 defense. Alright, so when I look at this static ability first, or just this card being your EX area and you're spending 2 play points, the first card I can think of is Karula, just because you're going to have play points going into your opponent's turn. And of course, you know, you might use your play points or however many extra play points on your opponent's turn, but of course being able to just spend 2 to deal 2 damage and to their leader, and then healing yourself for 2 at the end of their turn, while it's just coming back to your turn, you just go ahead and get those play points back. It's just something that definitely does scream Karula. Alright, so looking at Neckbet Evolve though, so she turns into a 3/3, but on Evolve you recover 2 play points, and then she has last words to put this card into its owner's EX area. Alright, so I think this is a pretty nice refund, so spending a total of 4 play points and then getting 2 back. Of course, you're going to want to trade this into a follower that very same turn you do evolve it, so you can go ahead and put this card into your EX area so you're able to spend those 2 play points you just got back on the end of your opponent's turn, so you can go ahead and ping them for 2 and heal yourself for 2. Alrighty, next we have Impious Bishop. So he's a 4-cost 2/4 and he has ward, and once per turn when your leader's defense increases, you can select any enemy fall on the field and deal it 4 damage. When it comes into play Fanfare, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, and we put a Zealot card that costs 2 or less from among them into your EX area, and this turn it costs 2 less to play, and then you put the rest of the bomb in your deck in any order. Alright, so breaking down this ability, I do want to say this is just absolutely huge because Haven healing is just something that's always going to happen. And when you do heal at least once per turn, and this counts for your opponent's turn too, by the way, you're able to deal 4 damage to an enemy follower. So healing and then having some removal is just big for Havencraft. And then on top of that, with this fanfare ability, which still kind of like blows me away that we're not looking for festive cards, we can get a Zealot card that's 2 or less and we can go ahead and play it for free. Alrighty, next up we have Chamber of Cleansing, which is a 1-cost amulet. So when it comes to play Fanfare, you put 2 Fox of Invitation tokens into your EX area. You can also activate to engage this and then bury this card to summon a Fox of Invitation token from your EX area. You can activate only if you have a Zealot follower that costs 2 or more on your field. Alright, so this is going to really start off all those Fox of Invitation tokens being into your EX area, which is going to help with your All Divine, especially when it's in your cemetery. Getting all this Fox of Invitation tokens out on the field is going to have a giant board full of wards, which will probably help you be very defensive on the next turn. Alrighty, next we have Winged Gatekeeper, which is a 2-cost 2/2. You can evolve him for 1 boon. It comes into play Fanfare, you put a Fox of Invitation token into your EX area. Alright, so it looks like this can be one of the 2 or more followers that can be on the field that can go ahead and put the Fox of Invitation token onto the field from our amulet. But looking at the Gatekeeper evolve, so he does turn into a 3/3, but when your leader's defense increases, you can deal 1 damage to each enemy leader, and then on evolve, you can select enemy follower on the field and deal it 2 damage. Alright, so mind you, soldiers, if this card is on the field while you do evolve and you're putting out all those Fox of Invitation tokens on your field, this doesn't just say once. So you're probably going to be playing all those Fox of Invitation tokens. Their Fanfare is going to trigger where they're going to be healing you for 1. This follower's static ability of pinging the enemy leader for 1 is going to be happening for every time you play a Fox of Invitation token. And on top of that, if you're going to be playing this in tempo, being able to deal 2 damage to an enemy follower isn't bad for a total of 3 play points. Alright, but next up we do have Boomerang Sister, so she's a 3-cost 4/3. When she comes into play Fanfare, you can banish a card in your EX area. You can select the enemy follower on the field and put it into its owner's EX area. You can also activate for 2 play points to banish a card in your EX area. You can select the enemy follower on the field and put it into its owner's EX area. Alright, soldiers, so we're not playing for the short game or the low to the ground game when we play Havencraft. We are a control deck. Most of the time, we're going to be wanting to get to our max play points sometimes. So being able to just stall our opponent out on just Fanfares or getting rid of cards in our EX area, if our deck generates EX area cards, of course. You know, of course, in the festive deck, that's going to be happening with those Fox of Invitation tokens. So being able to put those followers back into our opponent's EX area is definitely going to have them think, oh, should I play this again or should I play the next card since I'm going to be on the next play points? It's really going to have them thinking. But mind you, when you do go for these things and putting those cards into your opponent's EX area, you're not really getting rid of the resource. You're just really just stopping yourself from taking damage. So do be mindful when you do use cards like this. Alrighty, next we have Spiritual Blow, which is a 3-cost spell card, so it is a quick. You can select enemy follower on the field and banish it. Alright, soldiers, so I want to know what you all think. Is this card going to be replacing Alcoit's Light? So I know with that 1 extra play point for Havencraft, you have lots of things like Dark Offering if you need to go ahead and get the most out of that 1 extra play point. And then on top of that, have the extra 3 play points for Spiritual Blow here. So I do think, you know, still having 4 play points is going to be a tell on your opponent's turn, but you'll be able to do more things with this card. Alright, next we have Twin Blade Featherfolk, which is a 4-cost 3/3. You can evolve him for 1 boon. It comes into play Fanfare. You can select the enemy follower on the field. You can bury the top card of your deck, and if you buried a non-Havencraft card, you can deal it 4 damage. Alright, so it looks like it's going to be looking for those neutral cards you're going to be running in Havencraft, or even if you're playing a Glory Finder, you know, that's another story, of course. But for standard Shadowverse Evolve, right, being able to just bury the top card of your deck if you have a whole bunch of neutrals, or if you manage to look at the top 3 and you know a neutral is coming up and that card needs to be into your cemetery, this isn't really a bad card to be using. Alright, but looking at Featherfolk Evolve, so he does turn into a 4/4, but on Evolve you can select enemy follower on the field and then deal it 4 damage. Alright, so if you missed on the Fanfare ability, which, you know, can definitely happen since if we're only playing standard Shadowverse Evolve, then there aren't going to be that many opportunities for the neutral cards to be thrown into the cemetery like that. But, you know, being on the Evolve, you can do a total of 8 damage if you manage to hit both, but just being able to do 4 damage for 5 may seem a little lackluster, but getting a 4/4 body is still okay, I guess. Alright, but next we have Fox of Fortune, which is a 2-cost 2/3. It has Ward, and whenever your leader's defense increases, you can engage this follower to draw a card. But when it comes to play Fanfare, you put a Fox of Invitation token into your EX area. Alright, so of course, we still needed the other option just in case you didn't have Gatekeeper on the field. Fox of Fortune is just another option that you can go for when you do go for your big Fox of Invitation token play, or whenever you do want to play the Fox of Invitation tokens from your EX area, because they do just cost 1. You're able to go ahead and play it and then engage this card to draw a card, which will help you replace this card out of your hand. Alright, but next we have Pegasus Knight, which is 4 cost 4/4, and she has Rush, but once per turn when your leader's defense increases, you can summon a Holy Falcon token. And whenever a Havencaft follower token is put onto your field, you can select enemy follower in the field and engage it. Alright, so of course there are some decks that want to keep these followers reserved, or you know, when they do play a follower and then we really do want to get rid of it in a turn and we don't have spells or access to getting rid of it, being able to just play this Holy Falcon token for healing ourselves, engaging a follower, and then swinging Pegasus Knight into it is a pretty nice play. Alright, next up we have Almirage Defender. So she's a 5 cost 4/4. She has Ward, but when she comes to play Fanfare, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may put one of them into your EX area. If it's a Beast Follower that costs 4 or less, it costs 4 or less to play this turn, and you put the rest of the bomb in your deck in any order. So I want to go ahead and start off by apologizing. I did do a couple of takes of this one, realizing that the card did say Beast Followers on the right. So don't mind the translation on the left, but on the right one, of course, you know, we have the exact Shadowverse Evolve that they did post this past weekend. So pretty interesting that we are getting a Ward follower that does look at the top 5 for a Beast follower. So don't know that many Beast followers in Havencaft, or if there is going to be a Beast deck for Havencaft, not very sure there, but being able to get a Beast follower, which is pretty nice off of the top 5 to go ahead and play for free, is pretty cool. Alright, and lastly we have White Eagle Baptism, which is a 6 cost amulet. Whenever a card named Holy Falcon is put onto your field, you can give it +1/+1. When it comes into play Fanfare, you can summon 2 Holy Falcon tokens. Alright, so turning your Holy Falcons into 3/3 will definitely change the game up. So now they're not swinging for a total of 4 in one turn, they're swinging for a total of 6. So spending 6 play points to get 6 amounts of damage out is pretty nice. And of course, if you are going to be a deck that might be able to cheat out this amulet, or being able to get out a whole bunch of Holy Falcon tokens after you do play this, is going to be pretty huge. Alright, and then for the alt art we have Xion Immortal Aegis, which is a beautiful card, I'd say. So any of you that are going to be wanting to pick this up, I hope you're able to acquire this, because this is going to be absolutely beautiful, and I do think that you might be running this in a couple decks. Alright, but without further ado, let's go ahead and move on into set 15, Trial of the Omens. Alright, so as he makes his big return, and you know, he's no longer big in the way of being chunky, he is now cut and lean. So we have Marwyn, Repose of Despair. So he's a 4 cost 4/4, you can evolve him for 3, but he also has Ward. Now at the start of your opponent's main phase, you can give your leader +2 defense. When it comes to play Fanfare, if there are at least 3 enemy followers on the field, you can put a Torrent of Despair token into your EX area. Alright, so before we figure out what this token does, which I'm assuming is going to definitely help dealing with these 3 enemy followers on your opponent's field, so being able to heal 2 is pretty nice, and then also having a ward is cool as well. Alright, so let's look at this token. So we have Torrent of Despair, which is a 0 cost spell token, so you can select enemy follower in the field and banish it. Alright, so being able to banish an enemy follower for 0 is huge, I'd say, and this also having access to denying your opponent's last words is even bigger too, because Haven is really the only class that's going to be denying last words in this shape or form, outside of like maybe Force Crab, bouncing a card to the top of your deck or bouncing it to the bottom, or even putting a card into your EX area for the other classes. So being able to banish something puts it into a unique area that not every deck is able to access, so I think, you know, doing this for free is just pretty good. Alright, so looking at Marwyn Evolve though, so he does turn into a 5/5 and he still has Ward and the static ability of healing 2 on your opponent's main phase, but on Evolve you do destroy each other follower on the field. Alright, so for a total of 7 play points, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm okay with having a board wipe. And of course, if you do have those 7 play points and then you have that access to hard, you know, removing something the very next turn it comes back to you, it's just going to be a lot of control. But next up, let's look at Wilbert Luminous Paladin. So he's a 4 cost 3/4 and he has Ward. When he comes into play Fanfare, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may summon a follower with Ward that costs 2 or less from among them. And you put the rest of the bomb of your deck in any order, and you can also activate to engage this follower and select any follower in the field and destroy. You can activate if there are at least 3 followers with Ward on your field. Alright, so it looks like Wilbert got another card, and I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't expecting Wilbert to really get a card, but I have to remember Wilbert was around with the omens and stuff like that, even probably in the story, not too sure about that. But playing this card and then getting the top 5 for any 2 or less Ward followers is pretty nice. And on top of that, this card has removal, and that's something that the old Wilbert kind of lacked. So of course, for less play points, you can get 2 for 1, especially, not even 2 for 1, you can get 3 for 1. By being able to get another ward on the field, and if you have extra play points, or if you manage to have a ward follower that did stick around, you can go ahead and engage his follower, engaging his ward, and then being able to hard remove a follower. Alright, but next we have Sarissa Lux Flash Spear. So she's a 2 cost 2/2 and she has Ward. While there are at least 3 cards on your field, this follower has Storm. But when she comes to play Fanfare, you can select enemy follower on the field and give it -1/-1. Alright, so it looks like this is going to be the card that you're going to want to play off of Wilbert, which is pretty nice because she's a 2 or less ward follower. And then as long as you have those 3 cards into the field, she has Storm. She comes into play -1/-1, a follower, which is going to be pretty good in terms of your opponent swinging into your cards next turn. But of course, having a Storm follower that's also ward, and then having Wilbert, which is going to hard remove a follower, just really big in one turn. Alright, next up we have Shiro, Cursed Wings. So she's a 4-cost 3/3 and she has Ward. When she comes into play Fan Fairy, select a follower in your cemetery with Ward that costs 2 or less and then summon it. Alright, so there of course those low to the ground wards that you're really going to want to loop their abilities, or just being able to replay them is going to be pretty nice. So being able to replay these wards from our cemetery just for fanfares is pretty nice. Alright, so looking at Cursed Wings Evolve, so she does turn into a 4/4, but she still has Ward. But on Evolve, you deal each enemy follower in the field damage equal to the number of other followers on your field with Ward. Alright, so do be mindful, soldiers, when you do play this card, that she is not going to count herself with Ward because it says other followers. So make sure you have a board full of followers with Ward. You know, of course, probably having a max of 4, but you're probably only looking to do at least like 3 to 2 damage with this card, just because off of her unevolved Fanfare she's going to be getting a ward follower out, and of course you might already potentially have ward followers out before this turn, so you're probably going to be doing a max of like 4 or 3 damage in one turn with this evolve. Alrighty, next we have Cyclical Fate. So it's a 5-cost spell card, so you can search your deck for a Duex Ex Machina, summon it, and then shuffle your deck, and then you summon an ancient artifact or a mystic artifact token. Alright, so the cool thing about this spell card is if you do have responses in your hand, you're actually able to really use them. So being able to summon the Deus Ex Machina, she's not going to do anything until the end of your turn, but being able to summon this ancient artifact or the mystic artifact token is going to help you in terms of what you need to replenish. If you need to draw a card, you can go ahead and spawn out the mystic artifact token, or if you need to get some more removal in, being able to go ahead and spawn out this 3/1 with Rush is pretty nice as well. Alrighty, next up we have Perpetual Despair, which is a 1-cost amulet. So whenever a follower with Marwyn in its name is put onto your field, you may put this card from your cemetery into the EX area. You can give your leader +1 defense. You can also activate to engage this card and then bury this card to draw a card. Alright, so if I am correct, you're able to probably proc this multiple times. So if you have, 2 or 3 into your cemetery, you're able to play them into your EX area and then heal yourself for a decent amount. Of course, on top of the fact that the Marwyn we did just look at, the Repulse of Despair, which you're able to heal to on your opponent's phase. So being able to heal for like a total of 4, if you're able to get everything off, of course, is pretty cool. Alright, so looking at Adherent of Despair, so she's a 2-cost 1/1, you can evolve her for 1, and at the start of each opponent's main phase, you can select an enemy follower on the field. If this is reserved, the selected follower can attack enemies this turn. Alright, so it's going to look like a lot of the followers that we are going to be using in the Despair deck is going to be happening on our opponent's main phase. So, of course, the Marwyn is going to heal us for 2, while the Adherent of Despair is going to check for those followers that are still reserved. If this follower is reserved as well, we can keep it to where they're not able to attack and stall them for a turn, which I believe is very nice, especially when you're playing a little bit, towards the end game and your opponent is playing lower to the ground. Alright, so looking at Adherent of Despair Evolve, so she does turn into a 2/2, and at the start of your opponent's main phase, you still can select an enemy follower on the field, and if this follower is still reserved going into their main phase, that follower can't attack. But on Evolve, you select an enemy follower on the field. If there is a follower with Marwyn in its name on your field or in your cemetery, you can destroy the selected follower. Alright, so this card is just hugely stunning. I mean, even the art is stunning. So you can stun an enemy follower, and then as long as you have Marwyn on your field or in your cemetery, you're able to hard remove another follower. So as long as you can just play this card and then just keep it reserved, you stop another follower from attacking, and then you can remove another one. So that's really a 2/1 price here. Alright, next up we have Zeno Paradoxal Shield. So it's a 1-cost amulet. So when it comes into play Fanfare, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may reveal a follower with ward from among them and then add it to your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. You can also activate to engage this card and then bury this card, and then you can select a follower with ward on your field and give it +1 defense. You can activate only if there are at least 3 followers with ward on your field. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie, looking at this card, I thought the amulet was going to have ward and I was going to scratch my head, but luckily that's not how it is. It's going to be looking at the top 3, doing what the game plan is for your deck, being able to look for those wards, but being able to engage this and give those ward followers the extra 1 defense might come up and be helpful. There might be one follower that says, hey, if the defense increases, you can do something like this. But of course, you're only able to do that when you do have the 3 ward followers on the field. So hopefully there might be a situation where you're able to increase one of these followers' defenses and they get more things out of that. Alright, but next up we do have Crusaders Rallying Cry, which is a 3-cost amulet. When it comes into play, Fanfare, you summon a Holy Tiger token. You can also activate to engage this card and then bury this card. You can select any fall on the field and deal it 2 damage. Activate only if there are at least 3 amulets in your cemetery. Alright, so Beast Call Aria. This is literally just the new version of Beast Call Aria, except you don't get the Holy Falcon token, which isn't going to matter too much here, just because we're really going to be using this for the Holy Tiger to probably trade into something, and then doing the 2 damage to also probably finish off that follower. Alrighty, next we have Temple Healer, which is a 2-cost 1/3, and you can evolve her for 1, and she has Ward. When she comes into play Fanfare, you discard a follower with Ward, and then you draw a card. So I do believe that this card is going to go very wonderfully with Cursed Wings. So not only is this a 2-cost card that is Ward that you're able to play off of that ability, you can go ahead and discard another 2-cost Ward card to go ahead and play it for Cursed Wings later, or you can discard this card itself if you have, you know, duplicates in your hand, to go ahead and just draw more cards so you can filter through your deck a little faster. But looking at Temper Healer Evolve, so she does turn into a 2/4 and she has Ward, but on Evolve, you draw a card. Alright, so in them early turns, you're not really doing anything, especially in the Ward deck. You're kind of just like playing tempo. So having a 2/4 with Ward is just very good terms of stat line, and then this on Evolve for drawing a card is even better. Alright, next we have Hermit of Repose. So he's a 3-cost 1/5, and at the start of your opponent's main phase, you can deal damage to each enemy follower in the field equal to this follower's attack. When it comes to play Fanfare, you can spend 2 extra play points to give this follower +2 attack. Alright, so if your opponent is struggling in terms of like playing bodies onto the board and you have been pinging stuff around, paying a total of 5 play points will get you to deal 3 damage to the entire enemy board the very next turn, which could potentially, you know, sweep the entire board. Alrighty, next we have Hard Plume Warrior. So he's a 2-cost 2/2. He has Ward, but when he comes into play Fanfare, you can select another Havencaft follower with Ward on your field. If there are at least 3 followers with Ward on your field, you can give the selected follower Storm. Alright, so it looks like this is going to be the optimal 3rd card that you're going to be playing with Sarisa and then Wilbert here. So being able to give Wilbert Storm and then Ward is pretty cool, because you can swing for a total of 5 damage in 1 turn, and then that 5 damage can now convert into the Ward/wall that you're going to be building for your very next defensive turn for your opponent. So this is definitely going to be one of the 3 of Ward followers that you are going to be playing in tandem with Sarisa and Wilbert. Alright, so forgive me soldiers if I mispronounce this, but we have Claudrius. It's a 6-cost 6/6 with Rush, but when it comes to play Fanfare, you can bury an amulet and to give this follower Storm. Alright, so of course the #1 card I can think of to bury is Eidolon of Madness, just because of the last words. You get rid of them, you're able to deal 3 damage to a follower or to face, which of course that's what you want to do. And then on top of that, with some 6 Storm damage coming after that, you're able to do a total of 9 in 1 turn. Alrighty, and lastly we have Sacred Galval, which is a 2-cost amulet. So when it comes to play Fanfare, you can select enemy follower in the field and deal it 3 damage, and then also has last words to give your leader +1 defense. Alright, so we have some amulet support here. So of course spending 2 play points to deal 3 damage to something is just very good, especially in the early turns. But when you do want to get rid of this, especially with Dark Offering, being able to heal that 1 extra defense while also drawing you a card is going to be pretty nice. Alrighty, and then we have our alt art for sets 15 here, and we do have the Wilbert Luminous Paladin being the card that is going to be the alt here. So if you are a Ward Haven player, I hope you are excited to be picking this card up, because I'm not gonna lie, this Wilbert art looks absolutely amazing. You know, Ward is just gonna be very defensive, and Wilbert having the shield around him, it's actually pretty cool. Alright soldiers, that is it for all of the cards for sets 14 and 15. Some last minute announcements here though. Do want to apologize for not finishing this up this weekend. I kind of wanted to enjoy the 3-day weekend with family and stuff like that. You know, shout out to MLK and stuff like that. But outside of that, I am excited for sets 14 and 15 to be here at the end of the week. Really excited to have my cards in my hand for RuneCraft and be testing with you all on Discord when I finally do get my cards and, you know, get these decks built. But of course, one last final update is I am going to do my usual, not really podcast. I'm going to try and change it around. It is going to be, I guess, another version of Leonidas Logs or whatever, but I'm going to have my cam on and I'm just going to talk with you all, since you soldiers really did enjoy the talk that we did do last time. So a little face-to-face and just a conversation about Shadowverse Evolve. You can hear me yap. Something, you know, play in the background in case you soldiers just enjoy listening to me while you're in the car or something like that. But alright soldiers, make sure you are safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do. What I got to do. Just to get you away. What I got to to do,